This tutorial is for 5th grade, Module 1, Lesson 8. In this lesson, we're going to continue using the vertical number line to help us round decimals. The directions say round the quantity to the given place value. Circle the rounded value on the number line. So in question A, we have one decimal, 2 and 69 hundredths. First, we're going to round that number to the nearest tenth, and then we'll round the same number to the nearest whole number. So let's start by rounding it to the nearest tenth. You can see on the number line that I have my parameters. I have 2 and 6/10 at the bottom of the number line and 2 and 7/10 at the top. Those numbers are there because 2 and 69 hundredths falls between these two numbers. I have two whole numbers and 6/10. So 2 and 69 hundredths will fall somewhere between 2 and 6/10 and 2 and 7/10. First step is to find the midpoint between 2 and 6/10 and 2 and 7/10. So we know it's going to be 2 wholes and 6/10, and then 5 hundredths would be the midpoint between 2 and 6/10 and 2 and 7/10. After we place the midpoint, we'll plot the original number. 2 and 69 hundredths, or another way to look at that is 2 and 6/10 and 9 hundredths would fall above the midpoint. So I'll put that number here. And then since our original decimal is closer to 2 and 7/10, because it's greater than the midpoint, we know that it will round to 2 and 7/10. Now we'll take that same number, round it to the nearest whole number. My choices will be the whole numbers of 2 and 3, because it's a little bit more than 2 and less than 3. The halfway point or midpoint between 2 and 3 is 2 and 5/10. Now I need to plot my number. Well, the original number had 2 and 6/10 and 9 hundredths, so I know it's going to be greater than 2 and 5/10. So we'll place it above the midpoint. And since it's greater than the midpoint, that tells me that it will round to the whole number of 3. In the next problem, we're going to round 1 and 999 thousandths to the nearest tenth and then to the nearest hundredth. When I round it to the nearest tenth, my choices will be 1 and 9/10 and 2/10. Because it's greater than 1 and 9/10, the next tenths up would be 1 and 10/10. Well, 10/10 is the same as 1 whole, so we would record that as 2 wholes then. So that's why my parameters are 1 and 9/10 and then 2 wholes. The halfway point or midpoint would be 1 and 9/10 and 5 hundredths. Now I need to plot my original number. So the original number has 1 whole, 9/10, 9 hundredths. So that's going to be greater than the midpoint, 1 whole, 9/10 and 5 hundredths. It's going to be just under that 2 whole mark. So since it's greater than the midpoint, it rounds to 2 when we're rounding it to the nearest tenth. Now if I round it to the nearest hundredth, my choices will be 1 and 99 hundredths or 200 hundredths or 2 wholes. The midpoint would be 1 whole, 9/10, 9 hundredths, and 5 thousandths. The original number would be greater than that because it has 1 whole, 9/10, 9 hundredths, and 9 thousandths. Since that number is greater than the midpoint, it is closer to 2. So when we round 1 and 999 thousandths to the nearest hundredth, the answer is 2.